Hello, adventurers. This is Nate with the Random Adventures podcast. I'm here with Rich, Thomas, Neal, and Ian from Onyx Path. Just came from their final sort of seminar where they talked about what's going to be up with Onyx Path in the coming year. Rich, you were talking. There's one really big announcement that came out yesterday morning that I'm going to kind of save for the end of this.
Sure.
Um,
Probably best.
Kind of best, yeah. Always close on the good stuff. First off, though, I want to say thank you for doing this with us.
It's our pleasure.
One of the big things that came out, other than the big thing, yesterday morning, is that in addition to a lot of the normal stuff for werewolf and vampire, your Dark Ages book was actually #1 on Drive-thru RPG for some time.
Right, absolutely.
And is since been bumped down to #2 by a brand new release. So, really can't go by those numbers until that new release is worn off in nostalgia.
It's always nice to say any given time at any moment your new baby is #1. That's pretty awesome. It's not really all that really what's important is the sheer number of people who are enjoying it, and it's actually amazing that many people bought in on Dark Ages after we've done the Kickstarter and already have had a lot of those go out to people already. So it's really amazing that could then pop to #1 just with the people who didn't or who chose to get, I guess, 2. I don't know. It's pretty cool.
I know personally myself with Exalted, I'm probably going to be buying 4 print copies and 5 PDF
just to prove
copies.
that it actually happened?
No, actually, 2 ex-girlfriends, I promised to get that for them, and 1 for myself and 1 for the gaming group.
Right.
And then I have a friend over in Canada I promised I'd get a copy for, but I'm not going to pay international shipping.
Right.
So they can have the PDF. I can ship that by email for no cost.
If it's the print-on-demand one, I think they actually have a plant in Canada.
Oh, okay.
No?
No, we get our print books shipped over from the UK.
Oh, that's right. But it is still cheaper than if you've done it in the US. Yeah.
Because customs costs to ship over from the UK are cheaper than to ship up from the States for some reason.
Right.
Oh, for Canada.
For Canada,
right.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes sense. There were possibly still behave like they're a British province.
Well, I think that our Canadian friend Ian may or may not disagree with that.
Depending on who you talk to.
We're all part of the Commonwealth.
Exactly. Still love the Queen. So that's that shipping concerns and pricing is part of what we do deal with, but it's obviously not the fun part.
I was gonna say I know one of the print-on-demand printing plants for the U.S. is actually in the state of Wisconsin.
Probably it's a centralized location, and printing industry has always been really strong there. Yeah. As is man, so many awesome gaming fans in Wisconsin and the rest of the Midwest.
Well, I'll let my fellow Wisconsinites know.
Yep.
That said, one of the things that also came up was possible, maybe people seem to want it, return of White Wolf magazine as maybe a $5 every other month PDF. So, you said we'll continue to think about it.
Exactly, because it was a funny thing, because we're having a panel, we're talking about the new things, and somebody suggested it would be really cool if you did this again, and we got off on this, and then it was just we couldn't get off the topic. Somebody always had a new idea for it and how it could work and stuff. And what's funny is we had all those conversations, and we continue to have all those conversations in the same way that people were talking at that panel. But it's still something that would really require us to shift or evolve into to be able to do that sort of thing. So, yeah, we keep talking about it, and assuming that at some point we get caught up on some of these things we promised already, like Exalted.
Yep.
We can then have a little more breathing room to take a look at that stuff.
Yes. So.
And I think that's the other thing to think, because I don't know if your listeners are aware so much of what Onyx Path is, because so many of us were ex White Wolf employees or people who helped make White Wolf what it was, that people's perception of what these gaming companies are could be a little bit excuse. So when I say, we don't have the time and the bandwidth, it's because, like, Onyx Path is myself, my office manager, and Mirthful Mike Cheney, our art director. And then everyone else is freelance, and most of them have full-time jobs as well, because the RPG business just is not where you want to rely on for your rent money and your food.
Unless you're working for Wizards of the Coast.
Well, yeah, and who knows? I mean, that's
no offense to any Wizards.
Why Hasbro now is where that comes from. So.
Yeah. So moving into the new World of Darkness, Beast the Primordial. Still waiting on the Kickstarter letters to go out. I take it. Definitely looking forward to it.
Cool.
I know there's been some big changes with that over time.
Yeah.
Or at least changes to the mythology in it.
Well, I mean, certainly we realized that in the first pass that we showed the Kickstarter backers at the beginning of the Kickstarter that the way we had put things, the way it had been phrased by Matt and the writing team, wasn't being read the way that we intended it, and we took that on ourselves as well. We didn't write it the way they could read it, and so a bunch of that has been shifted. And some of those changes seem like they were like these incredibly dramatic changes, and I know some people feel kind of upset by that, but Matt has gone in and massaged that to try to again keep it to what we were trying to do with that. But it's a very complicated thing because you're playing with people's expectations of what beasts are and what heroes are, and why is this thing getting good things out of terrorizing humanity and stuff like that. But it's the World of Darkness.
Yeah, and I remember in the first pass it was talking about how the beasts are actually people's primal fears, being played up.
That's kind of where we wanted people to, but people got caught up on our inaccurate or somewhat ambiguous writing, and so we had to get back in and pin that down.
Yeah.
So, but that's happening. We actually have a almost ready for editing draft at the booth of Promethean, just printed out at Kinko's sort of thing. So it's rolling along.
That is great to hear.
Yeah.
So the second editions look like they are flowing along. Other than werewolf, demon, and vampire, what else is sort of second edition ready for players who want to get into it now, but as books come out, don't want the book that they purchased to be already outdated?
Very close with Mage. It's not ready yet, but it will be within the next couple months. So that'll get us caught up there. Promethean's in exactly the same spot. So that next couple. So right now,
I listed them all.
You listed them, but in the next couple of months, before the end of the year, certainly we're going to have a couple more available there, so that you can sort of get the ongoing second edition feel for that stuff.
Okay.
And then Deviant, which would again be for next year, is the one we announced at that time.
Tell us a little bit about Deviant.
I'm going to tell you a very little bit about Deviant, because we promised that we wouldn't go much further than the blurb that's in the brochure until we later on. It's just not ready to go too far into it. But so the basic about Deviant is that you're a human who has been changed. You've been changed by science, you've been changed by magic, you've been changed by some combination, something that's darker and more unknown than anything we could ever dreamed of, or physical, mental, something like that. And you have escaped. You've gotten away from the slab, from the lab, from the altar, whatever it was where this was happening. And you're angry. You're angry at what happened to you. You're angry that this has happened, that you've been changed, that you're no longer human, whatever the reasons for it, and you want payback. So the very things that are hunting you don't realize that now, with what they've done to you, you can hunt them. And it's time for them to be paid. They have to learn a lesson for what they did.
Time to pay the piper.
So, street level, power levels is. I mean, you could potentially, if you wanted to play it that way, go completely off the wall. But it's really designed to be very, very human centric. You're not dealing with creatures of vast cosmic power who've done this to you. Mostly, it's some jerk.
It's some cultist who asked the vast cosmic power to do this.
He thought he had the right, or didn't give a crap about what happened to you. So, Yeah, so I think it'll be nice after some of our more gigantic things like Beast, where you can do some pretty stupendous things, or Demon or Mummy, where we've kind of been ratcheting certain powers up to come back into something that's a little more personal horror.
Okay.
So that's that one.
Yeah, definitely sounds like a good one. I think, me and my listeners/viewers would love to notification on this.
Oh
So
yeah.
once your Kickstarter goes up, I'll be putting that up on there if there's a
Awesome.
Kickstarter.
Yeah,
I,
we generally do. I
yeah,
mean,
you generally do. So
Right.
now I'm gonna transition into what we just came from, Sion.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've got a lot of great ideas for it.
Hi, I'm Neal Price. I'm the Sion developer. And yeah, I would like to think that I do.
Yeah. I particularly like your comment of, the relationship between the Scions, humans, and the gods being a symbiotic one. They're not a story that has been told so many times that has taken on an actual life. They're gods or Scions who have advanced to god status, but who don't necessarily rely on, but do need people's faith in order to continue their advancement.
Yeah. If a god has no followers, they're not going to die. Gods don't need worship in the base setting of Sion. We have talked about eventually doing a sort of alternate universe spin-off where the gods do need worship. Where it's and they're very much starved for it, so it's a much more desperate style game. But in the base setting of Sion, gods are able to work miracles and do that without the benefit of their followers. Now, there are benefits to having followers, and there are certain things you can do with lots of followers that you don't necessarily need to burn that huge amount of divine juice and and do all that to work miracles. What and if you need to invade a city or crush a people, use your huge smiting thunderbolt to do so because it costs a lot of your juice to do so. You might just ask a bunch of your followers to do it, or your cult, is what they're called in Sion. And these cults generally form a larger religion and a larger set of mythologies. We're sort of the world of Sion is very, very, very much like ours, but it's also a world of myth. There are mythological creatures all about the concept of terra incognita, which was introduced in the Demigod book of the first Sion edition, and was kind of present in Demigod and God, but never really fully utilized because the line was so small. The concept of terra incognita is now in the main Sion book, and it is much bigger and much expanded. So if you set sail off the course of Ireland and you tack the right course and you go towards the right star, you'll eventually land on one of the 4 Irish city islands of myth. If you walk down a certain valley, you might find yourself in Shambhala, that sort of thing.
Okay. But it's not like I'm going to be going to the grocery store and get stuck in line at the checkout behind a centaur and know that, oh, great, I'm stuck in line behind this centaur.
No, not in the base setting, but on a darkened night, there might be a bunch of motorcyclists driving on the car beside you, and maybe it's a trick of the light, but it looks like that they don't actually have any legs. Maybe it looks like they're fused to their motorcycles. So it's that sort of thing. There's no real what we would call a masquerade in the terms of the World of Darkness sense. There's no pretending that these aren't there. If your Scions fight a giant beast in the middle of Times Square and it gets put on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, that's there. There's no breach. People will choose to believe in you or choose not to believe in you. And there's an almost, I was speaking to someone about this earlier, there's an almost weird mundanity to our world, and it's like, wow, the ancient gods actually are real, but man, I really need my latte today, and these spreadsheets aren't going to do themselves.
And I think we were also talking about having certain examples for players where we play with those things, we ratchet that up, and so this particular kind of setting is going to be like this, and then I mean, you could ratchet out all the way to the side where you've got mythological beings living in the same world as you, but default-wise, we're a little bit more in the middle.
Yeah, Sion itself. One of the big strengths of the first edition was that storytellers had a vast amount of freedom to take the game and do with it what they wanted to do. And we still want to keep that freedom, but we also want to give you a few more options, a little more structure for doing it that way. So as Rich said, we want to plan to ratchet certain things up and ratchet them down.
And let you know how to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, because one of the things I think, if you give people ultimate freedom, what we've discovered, because we think it's great, ultimate freedom, you can do whatever you want. And they'll go, there's so many choices. And I have people coming over tonight. How do I decide this right now? So we want to have the default there so they can just get started. And then, you know what, the next time we play, I figured out this thing. I don't want it like that, so I'm going to do this. Or I do want to have the centaurs running around because this is Centaur Town. And that's the kind of story I want to tell. A lot of people, I think, can't just dive into that. They've got to see what the baseline is and then work off of that.
Okay. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about Trinity.
Sure.
So, with Trinity, this is actually a line I'm completely unfamiliar with.
Okay.
It seems like kind of the base is that there's this evolving sort of superhero, action hero kind of environment where it starts off, people aren't fully aware that, these super-powered individuals exist, and then, 20, 40 years later, oh, hey, this is, superpowers do exist. They kind of seem to work along these lines. 800 years in the future, we've got this all figured out.
Sort of, yeah. The Trinity Continuum, sorry, I'm Ian Watson, I'm the Trinity Continuum lead developer. It's the Continuum as a whole is sort of an action-adventure type setting. So it's science fiction in the sense that there is no real magic, there's no supernatural, there's, at worst, phenomena that we don't yet understand. The core timeline sort of starts with Adventure, which is a 1920s pulp game. So these things happen and they're in the media, but all the newspapers and all the rags.
Extra, read all about it.
Exactly, all the rags of the time, they were making crap up just to get more readers. So a lot of that stuff is fairly easily dismissed by even a few years or a couple of decades later.
See the movie Newsies where the guy's like, oil spill, thousands die. You open up the paper, yeah, thousands of seagulls died.
Right, exactly, that sort of thing.
And some people were used to that kind of
sensationalism
hyperbole and loved it, and then that's what Hearst built his entire empire on. So it's a great time to be doing heroic things and sliding in amongst that.
Right, exactly. So you almost have sort of obscurity just through sensationalism. But by the time of Aberrant, which is set in the near future, that's when actual superheroes start manifesting, or at least people with superpowers. What they choose to do with those superpowers is up to them. So there will be PDECs, and they get together to form super teams and beat up the mafia or whatever. But there will also be people who are just really, really good at computers, so they go to work for Microsoft. Or, they'll start up a very successful singing career because they have such an enchanting voice. So that it's a very rich setting, and there's a very strong element of superheroes as sort of reality stars. Just that sort of modern mentality of almost worship.
Celebrity worship.
Celebrity worship, yes. There's even the Extreme Warfare Federation. Why watch normal humans beat the crap out of each other when you can watch people who could throw lava at each other, right?
Yep.
Then that moves on to the Aeon setting, which is in the 2120s. By that point, the superheroes have sort of left Earth, but there are new challenges that arise, and so you have Scions, people with the ability to use various psychic powers.
Let me tell you, conversations talking about the shared system are really fun, because I will say, well, Scions can do this, and Ian's like, Scions can't do that. And
Ian, that's because Ian mispronounces it. It's Sion.
Sion.
Yes.
So S-C-I-O-N is
And
Neal's game.
Yep.
And there are Scions, P-S-I-O-N, in Ian's game. And we haven't found a way to resolve that doesn't then devalue the games that people played 20 years ago. So it's like,
So we just have to deal with it.
I take it in your own internal conversations, use of psychic is sort of shunned.
Well, usually we communicate by text, so it's a lot easier that way.
Oh yeah.
So the Aeon setting, it's sort of space opera, science fiction, and it really sort of combines a lot of those sorts of genres together, where the Federated States of America is more of a cyberpunk dystopia, where Europe is sort of a post-apocalyptic wasteland because a space station crashed onto it a dozen years back.
Paris.
Paris.
Took out Paris. Left a big
Ooh.
crater.
But places like Brazil or Australia, they're like really the new almost centers of civilization. This is humanity's success stories. And then you have extrasolar colonies and you have jump ships. So it's a really rich setting. I'm really enjoying it.
Okay. And then Aeon will be the first setting book to come out.
Yes.
Then Aberrant, then
Yes.
Adventure. So we're basically moving backward through the time continuum,
Exactly.
seeing how these things came to be.
Right.
Right. So that was the way we published it originally because we thought it would be cool. Like that was a basic. Yeah, let's do it that way. Okay, that'd be cool. And what we found out is that there's a real resonance. It feels like there's this incredible depth of both history and sort of a foreboding knowledge. If you're going to, well, this could turn out like this. If in our game here, like if you're playing Aberrant, a lot of people want to play it in order to avoid the things that will eventually result in the world of Trinity being as bad as it is. And I think we can make a change there. And okay, then when we play Triculture, Aeon again. It doesn't have to necessarily be as those guys just wrote it because we actually stopped so-and-so from doing something. So we want more fluidity like that, and that's why we're calling it the Trinity Continuum because it's very much a thing that flows back and forth.
Yeah, it's not just sort of one straight timeline. There's much more fluidity and options and...
To use the phrase timey-wimey, weebly-wobbly.
Yes, very much so.
Yes, we like that one.
Another thing that kind of came up during the conference was the Aberrant War, which, in my own head, kind of sounds like eventually some of the Aberrants, or some of these super-powered individuals, are going to develop abilities that people start to lead them to moral decisions where, this is the turning point between when you've been the hero so long that you become the villain.
Very much so. The sort of the default timeline, but by no means what everyone has to follow, is the Novas, the superheroes of the Aberrant timeline, slowly start getting corrupted over time. So sort of like, in a sense, the Hulk, where if so everyone has their own sort of dark side, and that dark side grows stronger and stronger over time.
And harder to control your impulses because you can do whatever you want.
Right.
I'm Superman. What's
to stop me
from taking the money?
Right. Yeah. So you have the equivalent of sort of the Brotherhood of Mutants, where they feel they're above humanity, human concerns and laws don't matter to them. So they should be the masters of their own destiny. So at a certain point in the 2050s, that all comes to a head, and the masses of humanity basically say, get off of Earth. You're screwing things up for the rest of us. And so, obviously, the remaining Novas, they don't take too well to that, so there's a big conflict between the two.
Okay.
By the time of the Aeon setting, what the Aberrants, which are what the Novas have turned into, which aren't necessarily recognizable as even being human anymore, they've all been kicked off and are off doing their own thing on other worlds, but they still want Earth back. So that's one of the sort of major threats of the game.
Okay. Now to wrap up, the big news from yesterday morning.
It's all right.
Was there is going to be a Vampire the Masquerade 4th edition.
Correct.
And are we to understand that from this, basically to extrapolate from this, that there is going to be 4th editions of all of the others coming in the near future?
I think that no 4th edition should be assumed to be the same as any other 4th edition when it comes to the lines. V20, which we put out, we started working on it 5 years ago. We put it out 4 years ago or 5 years ago by the time we get to publishing V4. Was very much an encapsulated looking at all the great stuff that was in Vampire for second and revised editions and kind of pulling that together as a single wonderful, isn't Vampire the Masquerade amazing? It was basically what I was like, you love it, we love it, here, have this book that has all this encapsulated. It actually wasn't an addition in terms of, here's the new way to play this game. It was, here's the old ways to play the game, all wrapped up in a really nice package, and because we really like you guys. We did that. We didn't even know we were going to continue to publish anything with it. But we got such great reaction that we immediately started saying, I personally started saying, let's go do some more stuff. So it's kind of not set up to be an ongoing line, even though that's what we tried to do. We keep hitting walls creatively because you keep bumping into things that didn't get fixed because we knew that people liked them the way that they were. And I actually said at one point, I don't think it was to you, but it was about Werewolf. Well, people wanted to change some of the stuff in Werewolf that didn't work mechanically, and I said everyone who's excited about this has already figured that out for 20 years, how to play it that way. So let's not mess with that.
On the original V20 blog, there was the whole thing about whether or not the core mechanics should be fixed because the more dice you roll, the more likely you are to botch.
Right.
And I was even vocal about some of the disciplines during the V20 open development about some of the disciplines and how they never really truly worked. So for a lot of the 20th anniversary editions, we did change some things so that they would be functioning on WoW, but we didn't really give them a complete makeover or have the creative freedom to scrap some things entirely and bring them in new.
Right. Yeah, it was a buff and polish.
Yeah. So you've got that going. So we really do need, in terms of being a real edition change, the last time we did an edition was in 1998. It'll be 18 years next year, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it's been a long time without actually updating and moving forward with what it is to play Vampire the Masquerade.
I've been saying V20 was a look back, V4 is a step forward.
Right.
Okay.
Now when we moved that further down the line, and when we did Werewolf 20, we made more changes. And by the time we get to Mage 20, Phil had the great idea to start saying, I'm going to actually put in the book, here's the future fates of what could or couldn't be based on what you chose to do before, and he was very encyclopedic about that. So Mage 20, let's say, probably doesn't need the same kind of work that Vampire 20 does to make it, to say, okay, this. So Mage 4th, I don't want to say right now that it's just going to be the series of these books. They're all going to match up like this because we could just be that Mage 4th needs to be a not so thick or comprehensive version of what we're already doing in Mage 20 because that's already been the thing. Wraith 20 is actually more like finally Wraith Revised Edition because it never got one. So rather than say, okay, we'll make the best of these two editions, talking to Rich Dansky, who's the developer, and said, take this further. So we were always seeing that if only what we ever did was polish the things up. For some of the things, it just wasn't going to work. And now we're coming back around on Vampire and saying, let's do a real new edition.
Wraith and Changeling wouldn't even have 4th editions because they never got a 3rd.
Right. I mean, so what we do with it, we may call them the 4th edition. But
Definitely a lot of exciting news from all of you. We'll be looking forward to these. And I honestly looking forward to a lot of the new stuff that you guys are doing. Scarred Lands, getting a new player's handbook. I know some of the adventure paths are already out for Pathfinder, but actually getting the full player's handbook will be nice again.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yep, Pugmire. One of my co-hosts, Liz, is actually looking forward to that one.
Oh, cool. Excellent.
Yeah. I've been looking forward for Exalted.
Of course.
For those who don't know, I'm actually currently wearing my Exalted t-shirt.
So the 3rd edition t-shirt is excellent.
Yeah, 3rd edition t-shirt.
Yep. And we're getting so much closer with that. It's not long now. Hang in there, guys.
From the Tone of the Monday meeting blogs, it is literally just waiting on that one art pass that everything has come together. I understand the character sheet is being done by Mr. Gone of Mr. Gone's character
Yep.
sheets. So all of that's just
It's actually
coming
been
together.
done by him, so it's already in Maria's hands to be inserted in the book.
Okay, correction. It's done and it's all just waiting to be inserted and font checked and final
Exactly.
stamp of okay.
Exactly.
I'd like to thank you all.
Well,
Thanks for having us.
Thank
Neal?
you.